Today I'm here to focus on the minimum investment amount required for the E2 visa. Hello, my name is attorney Stacey Rogers. One of the most common questions I receive about the E2 visa is what is the minimum amount that I need to invest? And unlike some visa categories, for example, the EB5 investor green card that have a specific minimum financial requirement, the E2 visa actually focuses on the concept of a substantial investment rather than a dollar amount. So that requirement is actually evaluated using a proportionality test rather than a fixed dollar amount, which allows for flexibility depending on the size and type of business that you intend to invest in. And the real question is, what does substantial investment mean? So that term in the context of an E2 visa is actually not defined by a specific dollar amount. It's assessed relative to the total cost of purchasing or establishing the business, and the US Department of State uses a proportionality test to determine whether the investment qualifies as substantial. So that test actually requires that if the business is a little bit smaller, then there's a higher percentage of investment that needs to be committed. Whereas if there's a larger enterprise, a smaller percentage of the total cost might suffice for the visa. So a small consulting business, for example, might need to invest close to 100% of the startup costs to meet the substantial investment requirement, or a larger enterprise might only need a 10% investment. So when we put that into numbers, for example, if your small consulting business takes $200,000 as a startup cost, then you might need close to 100% investment. Whereas if your large enterprise takes $10 million to start up, then you might only need a 10% investment to meet the substantial investment requirement. The funds must be irrevocably committed to the business and subject to loss from the business. And that means that it needs to be invested in the business or very close to being invested in the business through escrow. And there must be contracts in place which evidence to the adjudicator that you are going to proceed with this and not just recant once the visa is issued. Another requirement that you have to be aware of is the source of those investment funds. So the source of those funds can be from your personal funds. It might also not be cash. It might be intellectual property or assets or some other type of investment which make up the total capital. Of course, the less cash you have and the more liquidated assets or intellectual property, it becomes a little bit more complex to prove what the value of those funds are and where they're sourced from and things like that. But the source of the funds must be legal and it must be traceable. So you have to be able to provide records of where those funds came from, where they moved to, and that it was all a genuine transaction. It's also important to understand that the investment shouldn't or must not be sufficient enough to just provide self-employment or self-support. So you must be able to have some sort of a glimmer of hope of employing people in the future, of having a successful business, and not just earning a small amount in order to support yourself, your family, and your living expenses while in the United States. So that means that the enterprise ideally should have the capacity to support employees, and you would demonstrate this through a 5-year plan and marketing plan, in other ways through the business plan, which is why there is a requirement for a business plan, and that business plan must address certain elements. Finally, something to know is that you must demonstrate that your business can operate for at least a year without relying on immediate cash flow. So that means that you need to have enough capital, and your projections need to show that that capital is going to support you for at least a year. All of these things come from what's called the Foreign Affairs Manual, also colloquially known as the FAM, which is used to adjudicate these visas at the consulates. And USCIS also has some guidance in their policy manual on these matters, which are all very helpful resources to look up if you're trying to start out. Most importantly, it's important to bring your business plan, your ideas, and your goals to an immigration attorney for an assessment to make sure that your business is on the right track and you're meeting all of the legal and regulatory requirements. If you're going to do something as serious as an E2 visa, that is definitely a worthy investment. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.